As an atheist, folks often try to sell me on a watered down, gentler version of Christianity, sort of a moderate version of Christianity. And I have a couple questions about that. First, why are we assuming I've never considered that I didn't look at that before leaving the faith, that I could never be moderate? It was fundamentalism or nothing. And second, isn't that still picking and choosing which aspects of a Christian faith you want to hold on to? It's still choosing to believe in the verses that make you feel good or that affirm your worldview. It's fundamentally lacking in curiosity, lacking in intellectualism. And I don't really want to live a life lying to myself, even if it's a more moderate version of lying to myself. So if you find that upsetting or offensive, or you actually agree and are like, yeah, get rid of those moderates, come over to the atheist side, then call us because the show starts now.
Woo!
Yay! Welcome, everyone. Today is September 15th, 2024. I am your host, Sofia Spina, and joining me is my co-host, ObjectivelyDan.
What's up? What's up? How's it going, Sophia?
It's going all right. How are you?
Doing good, doing good. I'm not hosting today. You're hosting today, which is a reversal of the last time we hosted together. So, it's nice. I get to sit back. I don't have to look what's in the call screening notes or anything, or the announcements, So you slay, Queen. You take over. You got this.
I have all the reading, which yes, it's like a book club. This for those behind the scenes, there's a lot to read. You probably noticed, but yeah, so we get to test my basic English skills pretty much.
You're doing great so far. I've understood every word you've said. So keep it up.
Yeah, because I bit my tongue the other day, so I am worried. I'm like, yeah, if I'm slurring, it's just a tongue bite, man.
In normal life, it doesn't matter too much, but in podcasting, it's a big deal. That's a big deal.
I know. So I've been very self-conscious. I've been gone for a couple of months, and so I'm like, oh man, right before coming back. So yeah, I just had a baby, so that's why I was gone. And now there's
we should probably talk about maybe mention the fact that you are now a giver of life.
A second time.
Second time. Yeah, second time. Yep. So
we have reached
congratulations.
replacement rates.
Oh my God, no. Oh God, let's not have that conversation on the show today, please. That
I think I may have just invited it in. Sorry about that.
Oh no. Yes, congratulations to that. We missed you. I thought I was going to be able to see you in person at the Back Cruise weekend. I think you're still, busy being a mom, so that makes sense.
She ended up coming quite late, and so I was still kind of recovering because she just decided that she did not want to make the exit at all. So we had to evict her, which now has happened to me with 2 children. So well, you're gone through it, so that's good. And everybody say congratulations to Sophia in the chat for doing that, because that's an accomplishment. We could talk about God's divine plan for childbirth and
that's
incorporating a doctor with a hook.
Well, you are fulfilling God's divine plan, for that. So that's good. Keeping the human race alive and all that. So good for you.
Corrupt them with my atheism.
I can't do that. I don't have that power, which is great. I don't want that power, just to be clear. I'm happy with the parts I've been given. I'll put it that way. So good. I'm all good is what I'm trying to say. I don't know where I'm going with that, to be honest with you. I'm just kind of making small talk here in the beginning of the show. So
reaffirm that being child free is a great choice. And I know that some people assume that that's not how I feel as I now have children. That's such a weird thing to say when you move from having a kid, a baby to you have children now. That feels very strange. But not having children to bring them into, a world of chaos and whatever this is totally fine, and I fully support that. And I have a lot of siblings and family members who've made the similar choice and are being involved in my children's lives instead, which is not an obligation, but I appreciate it just so much. I'm like, the more adults are focused on these little children improves their odds of survival. So great.
My partner and I've talked about adopting. That's something that we've talked a lot about. But we'll see. We're trying to get married first, and then we'll do that.
Versus me, I was pregnant at my wedding, so I just did it all at the same time.
Yeah, you got it all done, in a year or whatever. So that's that's pretty good, pretty efficient.
I have an efficient womb. Yes, it's been said of me that I think I was 13 the first time my dad told me, if we were living in a medieval era, then I could get such a good bride price for you. And I was like, that's a weird thing to say to your teenage daughter, Dad.
Oh, man. The dowry costs wouldn't have been as great. I would have found a discount,
Yeah.
Really cool.
So, that's something I've held on to and choose to interpret as a compliment because
I think that's the best way to do that, for sure.
I give the impression of hardiness. Anyway, with all that, Talk Heathen is a product of the Atheist Community of Austin, a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to the promotion of atheism, critical thinking, secular humanism, and the separation of religion and government. Very exciting that we live in Texas for all of that.
Yep.
Talk Heathen is a live call-in show, and we have open lines. So get your calls in at 512-991-9242, or from your computer, you can call at tiny.cc/callth. That's tiny.cc/callth, like Talk Heathen.
Yep.
So we have a question of the week, like every week. In our Talk Heathen to Me segment, we get to present that. Last week, we asked you to complete the sentence, "Not even faith healers will attempt to heal," fill in the blank. And here are our top 3 answers. Do you want to give that a look, Dan? Or do you want me to
I don't have it open right now.
Then never mind. I should have asked you beforehand. I'm coming back. I'm figuring it out over time.
I'll pull it up now. I didn't realize you were going to ask me to do things. So that's fine. That's fine.
As you're pulling it up, I'll go ahead and read number 3. So is from X Million, who said, "No faith healers wanted to touch my hemorrhoids. Just saying." Ooh, that, if they were effective, I would hope that for you, they would do that. I appreciate the disclosure. It was quite a disclosure that you have hemorrhoids. And, after just having been pregnant, I feel for you. But that is amazing. You're right. They want to heal external, So
Why
they
not?
want to get up in there. Come
Why
on.
Why not? I do have the next one. If you want. It's number 2. Yeah.
I'm ready.
Okay, number 2 is from James West, who says, "Not even faith healers will attempt to heal a Lego foot injury," which is true. So true. Can't tell you how many times that happened to me.
Well, and could also feel like, couldn't they just help prevent the Lego foot injury? God helps people find their keys all the time, apparently. So why can't God just shift Legos out of the way? I
don't know. When you were a kid, did you have a gigantic bin of just all the Legos, just all the pieces? That's what I had.
I'm the second of 4 children, and so we would have a whole society that included Pokemon figurines, Fisher-Price castles, and then we always assigned the younger kids to have to be miners and sort out the Legos because we were horrible, exploitative older children capitalists.
Nice.
And so we had a whole society going on with our giant Lego bin and the needs for organization.
Wow, you're really fulfilling God's plan even at a young age. That's crazy.
Fulfilling God's plan for power.
Unequal opportunity of work and unequal distribution of power.
For exploiting children. God's plan for shaping children to your will. It's great.
The children yearn for the mind, Sophia. They really do. So don't take it too hard on yourself.
Yeah, they never complained. I mean, come on. If they never complain, how am I supposed to know?
Yeah.
So, all right. On that note, do you want to read number 1?
I can do that. Number 1 is from Dan Johnson, who says, "Not even a faith healer could put Humpty Dumpty back together again," which is very silly, but it is silly, but funny. It's funny. That's a good one. Thank you for setting those in. Thanks everybody for contributing.
Yeah, that one makes me think about the fact that it just was pointed out to me, for the first time, that Humpty Dumpty is never mentioned to be an egg.
No, it's not.
Common
I think it's one of the. Is that one of those old tales where it's it's actually supposed to represent a political figure? I think it's one of those, right?
Yeah, I always assume it's a political figure or a gruesome plague. Those are gonna be my assumptions about things in the past like that.
Yeah,
I just feel like it's really unfortunate to imagine a guy named Humpty Dumpty. I can't imagine
It's
dating
not
with
the
that
most
name.
flattering name, you
No,
know.
it really
Uh,
isn't.
Dumpty. I feel like
Hmm.
a lot you could do with that isn't great. But you know, you can't these I mean, like there might be somebody whose actual name is Humpty Dumpty out there
You're
today
right. That's true. I just
in
hope they
this
don't
world of
teach
ours.
middle school because that would be tough.
That would be
But
tough. That would be tough.
yep.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So the
Um,
prompt for next, oh, sorry, unless you had something
no,
else to
go
add there.
ahead. I'm see, that's the thing. I'm so used to running things, Sophia. I am the host on every single freaking show I do. And now, you know, I'm just letting you take the reins. Just go for it. It's
I need to
great.
lean into that. I need to lean into God's design for my personal power. So,
Right. Yeah.
the prompt for next week is what's the reason God created hell? Wrong answers only. So, enter your best answer below the video in the comments. And next week, we'll reveal the top 3 answers. So, again, that is what is the reason God created hell? Wrong answers only. Objectively, Dan, do you have an answer for this?
The cynical fedora wearing atheist in me came up with the answer of, oh, so we can hang out separately from the Christians. But you know, that's what that came up with. I'm 100% sure you guys can come up with better answers. So want to see what you guys come up with in the comments on this one.
That sounds like a great answer. And also, I love the idea of just, yeah, having a big atheist party for eternity. Why not? It'll be at
Yeah.
least more interesting,
We always say that, and then it's definitely like not the classical depictions of hell. Like it's definitely like a lot of torture, or a lot of torment, definitely a lot of suffering. But there's always like this side in the community that's like, oh, we just get to separate from them. That's just great. It's like it's a little more complicated than that, but okay, sure. You know,
Yeah.
um,
It definitely is. And also I don't want to exist for all of eternity. So there's that.
there's
But
that. There's that.
there's a
But
great old timey song from a National Geographic record that they compiled in the 70s about it's all like Western songs, and they were
mhm.
apparently historically actually sung. And it's about God giving Satan Texas to create hell. And then eventually he decided he did too well and needs to go back and like create a different hell because it's
Oh,
too hot in Texas and there's cactus
okay.
and ants and all these things. It's a great song. So
Okay. All right.
yeah,
All right. Well, that's a vision. Texas is becoming more and more like hell every day. I think
yeah,
that's true. But you know, and we get to say that as Texans. I feel
yeah.
like
And
there's no
realistically,
greater shit talking about a geopolitical space than from the person coming from that space. I feel like
right?
that's the maximum level, right? You can
I feel
achieve.
like, in particular, I know I keep bringing up the baby thing. It's sort of top of mind, having just done that.
Hmm.
I've given birth to 2 babies in Texas as they're rolling back women's medical rights. And I'm just like,
Yeah.
I feel like I can say a lot about that now. I feel like I've earned that right, like that badge of like,
Hmm.
hey, I didn't die. And I was going to say a swear word, but I'm not sure if we're far enough into the show.
I think we're
Sure be
good enough
those
at this point.
people who are down with that.
We
Ooh,
got a super chat from Blind Limey who gave $10 and said, "Oh Lord, please heal my eyes. And while I'm asking for impossible things, please make me a wing commander in the RAF so I can fly the Eurofighter." And I didn't see that last part there before it went off the screen, and I don't see it in the chat. But it will maybe we'll read the rest if crew can put that in the chat for us. That'd be great.
yeah. Thank
But
you,
thank
Blind
you, Blind
Limey.
Limey. Yeah.
And yeah, that would be amazing. There you go. God,
Yeah,
you have a
what's our
challenge.
rate
Figure
of
it out.
childbirth mortality in this country? We're not first. I know
Aren't we?
that,
Yeah,
but
amongst
we're up there.
yeah, for industrialized nations or
No,
for
I'm
like.
saying in Texas compared to other states.
Oh,
So what's
I
our rate?
don't
Because
know. Actually, that's a great
it's
question.
I'm pretty sure it's not great. So
Yeah.
you know, first world country, by the way,
Yep.
allegedly. So it's really cool, really awesome.
So cool. Love
Um,
it.
I
Anyway,
went to I talked about this before, but I went to Amsterdam earlier this year, and I thought Austin
that's
was
cool.
cool. And I was like, holy shit, we don't know what freedom actually is. Okay. Because you can just I mean, granted, they want you to do it inside in coffee shops, but you can smoke weed pretty much on any street corner in any coffee shop in Amsterdam if you want. Of course, there's the red light district and all this other stuff. But it's just like, man, this is a place that knows how to live it up, is what I'm trying to say. Like they know what it's like to
Yeah.
actually, you know, live in that whole, freedom thing. doing a freedom thing, which we always talk about here, but I don't think we ever actually enact. So
on that note, like I took last year when he was 1, I took my son, just him and I, we went to Leiden, which is a little bit outside of Amsterdam. We loved Leiden so much, we never actually made it to Amsterdam. So we just stayed in Leiden, and we have friends who live there. It was so easy to have a baby there. Like, just, we could walk everywhere, and it felt like things were, it just,
that's another thing too, like very pedestrian friendly.
Yeah. And like there were bikes, and there were tons of kids in the park, and there were tons of parks, and like all of these things that I understand that we were in like an urban area. So probably there isn't quite the same level of walkability in all places. But for a place that espouses family values like Texas does, it was easier for me to have a 1-year-old in the Netherlands than having a 1-year-old in Texas. So I thought that was pretty interesting. And when we're thinking about freedom, we don't always understand, or it doesn't come to mind, the idea that sometimes freedom is just the ability to go where you want to go without getting hit by a car or without having to cross traffic. Like, there's a lot of ways we can look at that. And I felt pretty free with my 1-year-old, also strapped him to my chest, and he took a nap, and we went to the pub, which was really great.
America is just kind of one giant car park. And like, I feel like Texas is the worst about it, especially like Austin, Dallas, that whole I-35 basically section is like, Austin is not a walkable city for the most part. You can do buses, but that's about as good as it gets. And the rest of the world's got that figured out. Also, again, the architecture and stuff, like we think that we're religious, but then they got these amazing, awesome churches and stuff, and half of them aren't even being used for services. Like, they're just, I don't know, they're just doing their own thing with it, which is great too. Because again, you see these like giant awesome buildings, and then across the street, it's literally like the weed museum or whatever. So I don't know. That was pretty funny.
Yeah, something in Leiden, they're really proud of their university. And so there are paintings all around town of things that people discovered at that university. So like certain planets were discovered there, and different, like, I believe X-ray systems were discovered there too. There's a moment in Oppenheimer, if you've seen that, where he's teaching at the university in Leiden, actually. And so it's really cool to see this focus on scientific discovery and academia and intellectualism, and just be walking around the city and see monuments to that, as well as these churches. It's like, we can evolve as a society and celebrate more than just the fact that in the past we built a really cool building, but a really big building, So God, we no longer
really
believe
cool
in.
Building and then a big building. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like all right. So it was really refreshing. It was awesome. That was sort of a tangent from our.
Let's just talk about how great Europe is this entire show. That's really entertaining and really good.
Little part I love. But to remind you real quick before we move on, please enter your answers to what is the reason God created hell? Wrong answers only. And then we will read the top 3 next week. I really quick before we take our first call, I want to go to the crew cam also and thank the video. There they are. Look at those gorgeous peeps. Such a good beard. Thank you to all of the video and audio people, moderators, the people who take notes, make timestamps, to do call screening. Like, there's so much going on that I always feel like I'm just a yapper, and they're the ones who do the real work.
So, a yapper. What is that? That sounds like a 1920s like slang for an adulterous woman or something. Like, what is that? Yeah. That's like
I just feel like it's just a talking, like, just a person who's an opinion haver, and that's all they're really doing, right?
Them yappers over there and giving me the vapors.
Oh my gosh, yes.
That's crazy.
I think I'm gonna hold on to that. I just sort of threw that out, but I'm gonna be like, you know what? I'm going to hold on to that. All right. So our first caller, we have Chloe, her, who is from occupied Lenape territory. I'm sure that I'm saying this incorrectly. If that's part of an indigenous tribe, I absolutely am sorry that I'm saying that not correctly, but it's spelled Lenape for anyone who wants to look that up. That's cool that you specified that. Wow, I'm rambling. Anyway, she's going to be talking about evolutionary nature on spiritual experience, and you as an atheist, our perspective on experience. I'm not sure I quite understand that, but we're gonna bring her on here. Hello, Chloe. So tell us your take.
Hello.
Hi.
So yeah, I'm a theist, and I wasn't a theist for a long time. What finally convinced me was ultimately experience itself. Having the experience changed me in a way that I cannot describe with words, and it's frustrating.
Yeah, you had a spiritual
But
experience
the question,
specifically.
yeah, I had many spiritual experiences.
Okay. Okay, great. Go ahead.
And what I want to know is that as much as I remain skeptical, as much as I hold on to my skepticism and I treasure it, I have to look at those experiences and wonder, why are we wired for those experiences? Is this just a quirk of I am actually happy with the answer of, this is a quirk of evolution, deal with it. But the nature of those experiences, given how personal they are, given that they've answered personal questions about my life and answered, and really brought something to me, that's when I have to bring up the question, what's going on here? What's the deal? I don't think you're licensed to get the Seinfeld vase. So I won't go into the what's the deal. Never mind. But yeah, that's just what's your perspective on all of that.
Yeah. Do you want to start there, Dan? You look like you've got a thought.
I think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? I think about how we are beings that are capable of sensory experiences beyond our complete and total comprehension sometimes, and our need for explanation sometimes overrides our need for things to make logical sense. Like, I think we experience things before we fully logically understand them anyway, and so I think that kind of bias, it sometimes shapes our perspective, and I don't think that that's not always a healthy thing or a good thing. I think having a sense of life purpose and having a sense of place in the universe, is a great thing. As everybody who talks about it seems to think the world of it. At the same time, though, there are people that take advantage of that and abuse that, right? How many stories do we have to hear about people who felt so happy while they were in a cult, and then later, after the cult, they realized they were being abused, right? Obviously, that's an extreme example. But the fact is that that's a thing that happens with humans and seems to be unique with humans, right? Dogs don't really get into cults, or cats, as far as I'm aware. But you'll have to be seen. So yeah, I do think it's a quirk of evolution. I do think it's a quirk of just the human existence, our need to kind of fulfill ourselves. And sometimes we interpret our experiences in a spiritual way in order to do that. I don't think that necessarily lends credence to any particular ideology or way of thought process to be more correct than another, in a religious sense. That being said, I haven't seen everything in the world. I haven't known everything. I haven't experienced everything. So I'm open to being wrong on that front. But when it comes to the contemporary spiritual experiences that most of us, particularly in the US, talk about, i.e. Christianity, right? Like, that seems to be pretty bunk for the most part. I can't speak to global spiritual phenomenon, though. Maybe some tribe somewhere has some access to some deity or some sort of transcendent being that I don't, but I've yet to see any clear evidence of that. So there you go. That's my take on that. What do you think, Sophia?
Yeah. So I think a couple things. One, we can easily start coming into sort of evolutionary psychology, which I think is a fun field, but there's not a lot that we can really say is evidentially backed in there. When we talk about, like, why do humans feel a particular way, we can theorize about how our brains developed. My take with this is that as a social species, we have to empathize with each other. Our survival was benefited by the fact that we were able to work together, that we were able to empathize and view things from a different person's point of view. That requires imagination. And so the way that I look at it is that imagination is, which I think that spiritual experiences can kind of be a component of, not that you're sitting there imagining on purpose, but that your brain is capable of presenting us with things we haven't experienced in the physical world. Imagination is a byproduct of the ability to work together and to be compassionate to each other. And so I think that that's the way that I conceptualize it. Like I said, I don't have specific evidence for this because that's a very murky area of science that's super interesting, but again, like doesn't provide a lot of really concrete, provable answers. I think it's more likely that that is the case, though, personally, than that we are endowed with godly visions. I think it's also, when I look at it, we tend to have the spiritual experiences that we are somewhat primed to have. They tend to be fairly culturally specific. And to me, that would potentially affirm the fact that this is part of an outgrowth of us being a social species, is that even our spiritual experiences tend to make sense to some degree with those around us, or to be similar to things that we've heard of happening before. I definitely don't want to speak for your personal experience, and I feel like I'm sounding a little bit like I'm doing that. And so that's how I would conceptualize a spiritual experience. I personally was religious for quite a while, and I didn't have as strong of spiritual experiences as some folks definitely report having, but I remember feeling everything that you're supposed to feel, you know? And I look at that now, and I was desiring of meaning, and I was finding it there at the time. I was primed for those experiences, and I was part of a group that I really wanted to be part of, and it developed that for me. So I think that quite a few spiritual experiences can also be explained that way, that we're opting into a part of ourselves that's open to that. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So all that to say, what do you think there, Chloe?
What I think is unfortunately nothing. I have no idea what to make of it from a lay perspective, because I don't know anything about neuroscience, and I don't know anything, you know, beyond what I've needed to get by with my mental health. But when I feel really, you know, through meditation and through prayer, and when I pray to my gods, I'm Norse pagan, and they tell me to go to therapy and take meds, like, how do I make sense of those experiences? Like, fundamentally.
Yeah.
Like fundamentally, how do I trust my experiences is what I need to say.
That's a really interesting and kind of difficult question, because when we're talking about spirituality, we are saying, or when I'm talking about it here as it's a byproduct of evolution, I am fundamentally saying, I realize, don't fully trust your experiences. And I know that that's really tough and not the message that I necessarily want to give people, right? So how I would interpret that, and that's all I can tell, that's really all I can tell you here, is that there's a part of you that is giving you that information, that this is like, this belief in this instance is giving you information that I totally think is great, going to therapy and like seeking mental health solutions. But it's a way for you to maybe clarify what it is you're really needing in that moment. Again, I really don't want to come across as though I'm telling you what you need to believe about your own mental health in your own brain. But I think that's how I would think of it, is that, you know, thinking that your God's telling you that you need to do these things to be healthy is awesome. And is also, I think, something you maybe know deep down inside, and having it come from this external feeling voice, maybe validating and giving you the oomph to go forward with it. Again, though, I don't want to feel like I'm putting something on you here.
Yeah, I would add that, you know, let's talk about experiences sans God or sans spirituality. Okay, if I have a week at work where I'm getting really down to myself and I'm telling myself, Dan, I screwed up at work this week. I'm doing a terrible job. I really don't think I'm doing all that great, and I'm letting my team down. That's a perspective I might have, but that might not be something like my coworkers might have, for example, right? Or somebody else might have. And like, you know, one could be true or one could not be true, but it's not healthy regardless, right? For me to have that perspective, even if I am making mistakes, even if there are things that I need to improve on, like, that's not a healthy place for me to be at, right? So like, sometimes your health is more important than whatever is like objectively true in that moment, right? So like, in my experience, I would say, look, I would worry less about whether is there a God that's telling me I need to do this thing, is happening versus I need to do this thing because this is what's best for me, right? So like that should be your most important thing, I think. Take care of yourself first, because think about this: if there is a God or gods, they probably want you to be healthy if they want to have a relationship with you, right? So it's a good thing to do regardless, right? And if there's not, well, you should still want to be healthy, right? Because you want to live and maximize life to your full potential. So I think that's how you should approach it first, is like, hey, let me get into a place where I can be okay to even talk about these kinds of questions, because that can be a really life upending thing, right? Figuring out, okay, I don't think this thing is real actually, or I do think this thing is real and I need to make some serious changes. So either way, like your health is probably the most important thing you should be looking at if that's how you're approaching this, right?
Mhm. Something I would throw in
Well,
there as
I mean,
well.
that's
Oh, sorry,
just
go ahead.
I just wanted to chime in that, you know, the experience of, you know, my God's telling me to make sure I take my meds and
Mm.
go to therapy is just an example.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, you got to
you're-
understand, as when we hear that, we have to address that, right? Like we can't let that on the table. So, you know,
Oh,
we
yeah.
we want to make sure you're doing okay first. Yeah.
Oh, definitely, definitely.
Mhm.
But yeah, those kind of experiences where they just hold you in place and make you feel comfortable with yourself. Sorry if that doesn't make any sense, but those are the
No,
experiences that I've had.
it does. In the sense that I think we can relate to that feeling, that experience. There's a really interesting existentialist psychologist that you might enjoy, Irving Yalom, or Irvin Yalom, rather. And he was a big hand in at least amplifying existentialist therapy. And he himself did not believe in a God. And so he talked a lot about his own death anxiety, but he did talk about the fundamental need for meaning. Another big name in existentialist psychology is Viktor Frankl. They both focused quite a bit on meaning, and they didn't shy away from the fact that if they have someone that they're working with that is a person of faith, and that is entirely fine. There's no virtue to convincing someone, hey, actually, all of your experiences are wrong, provided, because meaning is just such a huge component of life. So even if you have existential therapy, it's focused on how you develop meaning in your life. And I think a fundamental component of that is also feeling comfortable with yourself, feeling that you deserve meaning and deserve to live a full life based on the meaning. Sorry, I can rant about this sort of thing for a long time, but I feel like moving aside from just a focus on, you know, being told to like take your meds and go to therapy, the question of meaning is big for most people. I wouldn't say all, because maybe there's exceptions, but I think that being comfortable with yourself, like that, to me sounds like it's fulfilling a fundamental need of yours that I also have. I just fulfill it a different way.
Yeah, and as a theist, I think that's totally valid, and I want to make sure that that's not a point of contention here.
Yeah. It's just part of how I would make sense of it for myself, looking at it from an atheist perspective.
So yeah, it's just, those are really the big questions that I had. I really don't have much else, not unless you've got questions for me as a theist.
I think my big question for you, and this doesn't necessarily have to be something you answer right now, I'd be curious what you wanted to be told about this, because it looks like it's something that you're working through and you're thinking about. And, you know, you called us, and I really appreciate your perspective. I appreciate your call. What is it you wanted to hear? And I don't know that you have a perfect answer for that, but I wonder if inside you there's something that's like looking for a particular answer, and I'd be curious as to what that is, even if it might be too personal to want to share on the air too. Does that make sense?
Oh, it does. Yeah, it's just, if I go into a place where people agree with me on the whole nature of spiritual experience, what am I going to learn? What am I going to work towards? What space am I going to explore? So I just wanted to make sure that my understanding was correct, and make sure that I wasn't coming at this the wrong way. There really wasn't anything I was expecting or wanting. It was just, I don't know. Yeah,
Yeah. Well, thank you for
Anyway,
calling. You're
anyone
super
has
interesting.
nothing
I
else.
really appreciate that. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Thank you for calling. I'm going to go ahead and let you go. But yeah, I appreciated that perspective. And I feel like that's something a lot of people are working through who aren't part of organized religion anymore necessarily, and who are still, looking for something, feel there's something. I appreciate, it sounds odd, but I appreciate the uncertainty and the honesty about that.
Yeah, I think when I was a Christian, I did struggle with sense of life purpose, right? I thought I was waiting for God to tell me what he wanted me to do with my life, basically. And I regret that now because I felt like there was a lot of time I could have invested in myself in doing what I wanted to do versus what I thought God wanted me to do. Because whatever conclusion I would have come to probably would have been some mix of both anyway, right? Like I don't think if you like hate animals, but then like I don't know, God says, "Oh, you need to be a zookeeper." I feel like you don't hear that story. I feel like it's always like, "Oh, God told me to do this thing," which happens to be the thing I love doing the most, right? So like so I think people work that out usually. But point is, right? Like I don't need spiritual explanations or experiences to necessarily dictate how I should live my life, right? And it's a harder way to live because I don't get the benefit of having a divine officer give me commands on what I need to do. I have to kind of figure it out for myself, but it's something that we all have to deal with, right? So there's pros and cons. The pro being you have an immense freedom. The con being what do you do with that freedom? It's a choice paralysis problem because now everything is open to you, and so what do you do with that, right? So that's how I interpret my own sense of finding identity and purpose now as an atheist. Is just I gotta figure that shit out. For me, it's reading a lot of books and going to work and living life, and that's how I'm doing it, and it's working out okay so far. I'll tell you if that changes, if I need to go study with some Tibetan monks or something to figure out the next phase of my life, but it's working out okay right now.
Yeah, I feel like it's funny that you bring up freedom because not to be such a wonk and a nerd right now, but Irvin Yalom, like freedom and death are two of the things that freedom, death, meaning. Those are like three of his big central tenets. There's a fourth one that I'm sure someone's yelling at their screen because they remember, but I don't right now.
And Viktor Frankl's book is literally called Man's Search for Meaning.
Yes,
so
right.
It was all about that too.
Which I think I've referenced on this show before, which is pretty funny because I'm like, yeah, just going into existential psychology, I suppose.
You kind of have to. You kind of have to when you talk about meaning, because there was a time where people got their meaning from contemporary Western society, got their meaning from God. Now we don't. At least some of us don't. So what do you do with that? That's the question. That's what everybody's trying to figure out. And I don't know. Yeah. Some people turn to other religions. Most folks I've talked to from the pagan communities were Christian at some point. It's very unusual. There are some that were kind of mostly atheists, but most of the time when I talk to, it's folks who experience spirituality in other mediums that weren't satisfying enough to them, and a lot of them find a more satisfactory experience through paganism. So that is like a shift in people's self-identity in reflection of themselves to the world, in the same way that we do. When we figure out that we're no longer Christians, but we go the atheist way, we have to figure out our own ways of navigating that. So, I'm not saying that makes paganism, obviously I believe that there are gods or anything. I just think that that's a way that people interpret their life experience.
There's a lot of answers to it. And I think that when we're thinking about meaning, it's really hard to dictate how that should be answered for folks, right? Yeah. And I definitely don't think that's what we're trying to do. But on that note, I'm going to give a few announcements before we take our next call.
Oh, yeah, do it.
So we are excited to announce the return of our popular brick fundraiser. After the overwhelming success of our first round, we're opening up another opportunity for you to leave your mark with the ACA by purchasing an engraved brick. Like, I feel like you guys have probably seen those at a library or something. I feel like it's such a cool thing to see. You can contribute to the creation of a beautiful patio. Look at those gorgeous bricks. That showcases the heartfelt messages of our generous donor. Each brick will be inscribed with your personal text, making it a lasting tribute to your support. So join us in building a space that celebrates our community and the impact of your contributions. Look at all that work going in. That's gorgeous.
Yeah.
Amazing. Get your brick at tiny.cc/ACA bricks. That's tiny.cc/ACA bricks. And I'm actually really glad this has come back because I meant to get one the first time and I didn't. So now I get to have one now.
I want to give a shout out to Tina, who is a member of our board and also is in that video. And she told me when we were at the back room, she hates that video because she's like standing there in it and she's like not actually doing any brickwork stuff. But she's a very hard worker and does a lot of stuff for the ACA. So give it a shout out to Tina there because I just think that's funny. That's how she walked away from that video.
Justice for Tina. She absolutely does work hard. That's amazing.
Yeah,
100%. So next thing we want to call your attention to is that there are printable call-in flyers at tiny.cc/ACA flyers. You can see them there on the screen. So you can post these with permission to community bulletin boards so people know they should call our show and defend their faith. If you do post any flyers, make sure to snap a picture of it in place and send it to tv@atheist-community.org. It's TV and it's atheist and then a little normal looking dash community.org. And we may feature your photo on an upcoming show. Like these are really cool to get people to call in and have a chat with us. So that would be awesome. You can get those again at tiny.cc/ACA flyers. You should also give a call to, I'm sorry, I'm going to restart that whole sentence. You should follow Talk Heathen on TikTok, which Richard works very hard on. We appreciate Richard so much. At Talk Heathen, all one word, Talk Heathen, and join us for our pre-show lives at the ACA. So Atheist Community of Austin. Okay, so there's an Atheist Community of Austin TikTok and a Talk Heathen TikTok, it looks like.
That's right. Here's what's awesome about the Talk Heathen TikTok is that Richard is always going live beforehand. And when he's live, obviously like we're here trying to like get stuff ready for the show. He could absolutely be talking mad shit and we would never know.
That's true.
Because we have to get so ready for the show. And I'm not going back and looking at those lives. I don't know about you. So he could absolutely get away with it, and we would be none the wiser. So
now I almost hope he is.
You should go see if Richard's talking shit for us.
Yes.
Yeah.
Let us know. That is amazing. He's just like, Sofia can't read out loud today. That's very clear. That's what he's probably saying, I'm feeling like right now. We also have merch. So get your Talk Heathen merch at tiny.cc/merch ACA. That's tiny.cc/MERCHACA. There's new pins and backpacks, onesies. I need to get a onesie.
You do need a onesie.
Real bad. I need it so much. And youth tees. So you can outfit your whole family in Talk Heathen gear. And I mean, that sounds amazing.
Yeah.
And please like this video and subscribe to the channel, enable notifications, comment below on your favorite caller, on your opinions and violent reactions, whatever it is that you want to, your reaction to the show, all the YouTube stuff that helps us out. That really does help us get seen, which helps more people call in, helps more people think a little bit more harder about their beliefs, does all the good things the show does. You can help by just hitting like and subscribing and enabling notifications, which is the little bell icon in case you didn't know that, and commenting below. So with all of that, let's take another call. We have Marlin, him from the Philippines. Shout out to the Philippines. I lived there for a bit. Super cool. I would like to discuss about my paranormal experience and how it proves that spirits are real and documented. So, Marlin, thank you for calling. Tell us your thoughts here on the spiritual experience you had and what that proves for you.
Hello, guys. How are you?
Hi. Doing all right. What's up with your thought here? I'm curious. That spirits are real and documented. Tell us about that.
Well, it's because there has been an incident on a playground. This is located on a school near a cemetery, and then the people walking by, they notice the swing on the playground. It never stops moving. It just keeps swinging back and forth, and until the cops were called, and even the police has saw it. Even the police has been involved, and the local news. They came in with the dogs, and there were people that saw shadow figures over in that playground area of the school. So yeah, it has been documented.
So to
And
me, this
everyone
gives the
saw it, including me.
Where has this been documented? Is there a website where this is at, or
On the local news.
Mhm.
The
okay? Is there a
Philippines.
paper? Is there a reference we could look at this?
On the newspaper, internet. It's been told in GMA. I think GMA, there was a program called KMJS. You know,
Okay, so I think that the
and
way that I might view this, though, yeah, I feel like local papers do tend to report a lot of things that don't necessarily turn out to be super well substantiated just because they're looking for news. But I would also say that this kind of sounds like an incident to me that could be a sort of like one person thought they saw something, and then it became the suggestion that that's what you're supposed to see. And I know it's hard because in a way I'm saying, like, I doubt your personal experience, but I think that sometimes we're primed to see things. I think that if we go by and there's a breeze or something happening, that it's entirely possible that we see what we expect to see, that we're going to see a figure or see a shadow and not look for natural explanations because we're ready to believe a spiritual explanation.
No, the swing set never stopped moving.
Mm-hmm.
It never stopped moving. They tried to do anything they can to intervene.
I'm assuming it's stopped now, like it's not still going, right?
That were seen. Yes, it kept going for a couple of hours.
Okay. Well, again, I'm desperately trying to Google stuff here. I think in the future, and this is for anybody that calls in, if you have a specific experience and you say this is documented publicly, you should be ready to provide that source to us so that we can take a look. Because otherwise, it's going to be your word versus our word, right, Marlin? Like, I can't verify that what you're saying is true without having a source to look at it, right? Otherwise, we have to just blindly speculate based on what you're telling us, and that's not a super great way for us to figure out if something's true or not, right? Like, we have to be able to kind of look at the facts of a situation and see what's actually going on here, because maybe it wasn't going on for hours, maybe it was just for a little bit, maybe it wasn't actually reported on the paper, maybe it was reported on a forum somewhere, right? There could be some differences here that we're not going to be able to verify unless we have that information handy. Does that make sense?
Yes, I understand that.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that that's pretty important because we kind of just are like, I guess that might have happened. We don't necessarily have anything to look at here. I would be interested to know your thoughts on a particular TV show. So have you ever heard of Paranormal Home Inspectors?
I've seen that shit.
It's
haven't
great.
seen that show. Sorry.
Yeah. I if it's available, I highly recommend it. I actually can't. I've been looking for because I think it aired initially in Canada, so I can't in America see exactly where I can watch it. But it's super fun because they take a psychic and a paranormal researcher and a certified home inspector into the home of someone who believes they're being haunted. And the people who live there and the psychic will usually have experiences that they feel they can't explain, experiences that they feel are very concrete evidence of what's going on. And then the home inspector inspects the house and almost every single time has quite a few explanations for, oh, this actually is drafty and you might not realize it, but that's what's causing this noise up here. And so these things are connected and we can actually fix that. It's a problem with the house. It's not necessarily something that it is paranormal as much as that's how people experience it. So I would be curious if you can, watch that TV show, because there are a lot of little incidents that sound very similar to something like a swing continuing to move when people try to stop it. And there is a natural explanation the vast majority of the time, at least. So I would say, I'm certainly skeptical of this being proof of anything, partially because I'm like, I think that there's a lot of times a natural explanation without actually having the news story. We can't speak too specifically to it, but I think that's my take. Yeah.
Yeah, and I've thought about calling about this to you guys because I have a video and a couple of photos of a shadow figure like caught on my phone,
Honestly, I would say send that to the email.
Yep.
Yeah.
Send it to the email. Calling it
Totally.
Truth Wanted.
Email?
Truth Wanted. We'll want to hear it. We'll want to hear it on there. But here's what I'll say, and I think we'll probably let you go after this, Marlon. But the Philippines in particular, extremely Catholic country, right? Every time we get a call from the Philippines, it's always about demon possessions or shadow people. I don't know if the Philippines got something going on that the rest of us don't have it, but I think the lens of a cultural experience might reinterpret some facts of a particular matter that we could see here. And I wouldn't even doubt that even if a local paper is reporting on a phenomenon, that there may be some things again where a cultural bias might be at play as to the particular facts of a phenomenon. I think you have to evaluate in your own mind which is more likely, that people are misremembering, mishearing, or misinterpreting an event that's happening, or there's demon figures that are hanging out at a playground swinging a swing for a couple hours for apparently no reason whatsoever, right? Like, you have to think about, what's going to be more likely in this case. From what I'm hearing you right now, I'm going with the former, which is just, I think there's a misinterpretation of events that's happening here. I think maybe there's some telephone going on. If there is some documentation of this, I'd love to see it, but for now I don't have that. So that's the conclusion I'm left with. Does that make sense?
Is that also the same case with miracles, like with religious miracles?
Okay,
Yeah.
so I'm going to go ahead and say goodbye to you because we actually have another call coming up that I feel like speaks a little bit to, the what they say is religious phenomenology. And so I feel like this is kind of paired with that. We could go on all day about somebody saw a miracle or experienced a particular thing and that there's, not a lot to substantiate it, but they very firmly and very earnestly believe in it. Yeah. So I think that that's maybe what we have going on here. After living in the Philippines for a bit, yes, it is a country where there's quite a bit of discussions of demons. There's quite a bit of, it's sort of referred to as folk Catholicism in one textbook I read about it. I think that every place adapts the faith to their local culture, right? And I think that this can be a part of it. It's fun and exciting to think that there's a spirit there. It's always exciting to be like, maybe it's a demon.
But Marlon, if you're still listening, to answer your question directly, yes, I do think this applies to pretty much every miracle that's ever been recorded ever. Even modern times in the Catholic Church, when they talk about miracles, which they do have committees for, which they allegedly go through a rigorous process for determining whether something's a miracle or not. 99% of the time in modern times, those miracles are going to be medical phenomenon that we don't have a full understanding of, like remission of cancer and stuff, right? But then when you go back like 500 years, it's like they put her head back on her head and she was walking around town. And it's like, okay, well, I haven't seen that, but cool if it happened, I guess. So there you go.
Yeah, I would also, emphasize that even if we don't have a perfect explanation for it, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's a spirit. And as you were kind of mentioning that, like, the less we understand about the natural world, looking back in history, the more we're emphasizing, people thought it was a spirit. People literally believed Jack Frost existed and painted frost on your windows. It wasn't like a myth. It was a thing they really thought was happening. And we know now that that's not necessarily true. So yeah, even if our answer was to shrug and say like, that does seem weird, it doesn't actually lend itself to believing that it's a spirit. It doesn't really prove anything in that vein, which again can be hard if it's an earnest belief. But I think that's my take on that one for sure. Yeah. Yep. On that note, I feel like this call dovetails really well into what we were just talking about. So we have Jackie, he, him from Mississippi. This is really funny, by the way. I lived in the Philippines and I also lived in Mississippi for a bit. So we're just having like the places that I have lived call in today, which is interesting. The case for religious phenomenology. All right. So Jackie, give us the case for religious phenomenology.
Okay. First of all, before I make my case, I just wanted to check on how have you been after giving birth?
Oh, that's so sweet of you. I've been doing all right. Everything's, recovering as it should. The baby is super cool. And she, she actually doesn't cry as much as I almost feel like she should. And it's interesting because this is totally silly, right? But I was thinking that, the parents of psychopaths and sociopaths always say that their babies didn't cry very much. And so I'm kind of like, you could cry more, actually. Like, she's too easy of a baby, if that makes sense. But yeah,
that's a specific lens to view that, Sofia, that I feel like only you would have.
My brain is a very strange place.
I don't think you can extrapolate like that.
Yeah, I think you're right. I just am being a little silly about it. It's been really exciting to watch my son become an older brother also, and he's very cute with the baby, and that's really great. So yeah, been really enjoying it. That's incredibly sweet of you to ask. So thank you.
So yeah, I basically wanted to present the case for religious phenomenology because, are you guys familiar with the term continental philosophy?
Yes.
I'm not actually. You want to go ahead and give us a summary of that one?
So basically, continental philosophy is philosophy from mainland Europe, so Europe other than the UK and Ireland. And basically, I tend to notice a lot of atheists who are publicly advocate for atheism are not generally familiar with it, or most people don't have that type of mindset. So it includes things like phenomenology, existentialism, German idealism, psychoanalysis, and other movements. And I tend to notice that in the debates about religion, a lot of it goes on to like propositional logic and with more what's called the analytic style of philosophy, or philosophy from America and Europe. And I think that's a flaw because it is a major part of a philosophical component that I don't think it's talked about enough. But anyway, that it's sort of tangentially related to the point. So are either of you guys familiar with the cognitive scientist John Vervaeke?
I
would just point out that analytic traditions and continental traditions are both Western. I don't know why you'd make the distinction between them being like one particular parts in America and different parts in Europe. But yeah, they're definitely both Western traditions of philosophy and a categorically flawed understanding or categorically flawed sort of way in which to view philosophy, but they can be broadly useful. But yeah, I can concede to your point that yeah, there is a particular lens in which some atheists will look at the structure of arguments that may be problematic under some views of philosophy. But to your other question, no, I'm not familiar.
So basically, John Vervaeke is a cognitive scientist in Canada. He identifies as a non-theist, which I disagree with, but he basically talks about the case for the problem with atheism lacking the ability to recognize spiritual and religious understandings of ontology and mysticism being properly construed not as some new age woo-woo stuff, but a genuine ontology, and how participatory engagement with spirituality in a religious sense transforms people. Or are either of you guys familiar with Jordan Peterson?
Yes. I think we can start maybe with the point you just made, actually, if that's all right. Because so the premise there, if I'm understanding you correctly, is that atheists are not addressing the fact that religious experience changes people. Is that correct?
Maybe, but it's more kind of an oversimplification. I think a better way to say it is they don't seem to engage with the more essential aspects of the relation between cognition and transcendence, if that makes sense.
Like what?
Like how relation to the transcendence or influences people's decision making, how the transcendent it affects our subconscious, our psyche, or collective unconscious, using Carl Jung's terms, and how participation in these reenactments of ritual experiences allows us to tap into that aspect of ourselves.
I mean, I don't. So what is this a guy's opinion, or is this research that he's done that says, oh, atheists don't do this? Because it sounds like this is some guy's opinion. If this is some guy's opinion, I'm happy to say that, yeah, I recognize that people's understanding of their beliefs and their system of beliefs affect their social framework, affect their identity. I mean, we were just talking about that in our previous call. It definitely affects their worldview and how they operate in the world. I don't know why me as an atheist means I lack an understanding of that.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious specifically,
I mean, I'm not. I don't. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I'm curious specifically because I'm kind of still trying to get my brain a little bit around what it is I'm supposed to be answering here. I think sometimes we get a little lost in jargon, and I think that might have happened here to me. So I'm looking at you said essential aspect between cognition, and it sounds like kind of a more spiritual experience and the ability to have like a subconscious and the other components of our brain.
So are either of you guys generally familiar with phenomenology, like Martin Heidegger, Maurice Merleau-Ponty, Karl Jaspers, or the other ones?
Yes, German phenomenology with Heidegger, yes. Later stuff, not as much, but mostly, yeah.
The way I would say it is, it's sort of like Jordan Peterson talks about like this. When you see a cup, why do you see a cup? Well, because that cup provides you water. And why is that water valuable? Because it helps you live. And why is living valuable? And you can go on and on with an infinite regress of perception. And so basically the phenomenological interpretation of meaning in a religious sense is that whatever sits at the pinnacle of the infinite regress of reasoning for living and for motivation is in the, you could say, religious phenomenological domain. And I would also argue, using how Jordan Peterson talks about using Carl Jung's that analytic psychology, that there's aspects of our subconscious with a priori archetypes that we motivate to as a human being. That we describe in religious language.
Yeah. So Jackie, do you think 99% of Christians understand their relationship with God that way?
I mean, what do you mean?
How about 95% or 90%? Do you think any of them are using that language to describe their relationship with God or their relationship with Christianity as a theological system? Right? I don't think most people are, is my point. I think these are particular people who study phenomenology and who write papers about this stuff. I don't think that's the world I grew up in as a Christian, and I don't think most people grew up as. So I to be honest, I don't really care, right? Like what I'm interested in is mostly the power dynamics that Christianity brings, but also like the real world experience that Christianity brings. I mean, we can talk about it in this grand philosophical sense of the regress of perception and what have you. But why is that meaningful to me? It's not. Like I can engage in this conversation all day, but like what's the point? What am I going to get out of that? And what are most Christians going to get out of that even?
Well, the meaningfulness here is, the question is, are there meta-narratives, and are those meta-narratives what we would describe as religious or eternal? So, like, say, Nietzsche,
I mean, that's a separate question from everything you've just described. Sure,
I'm
go ahead.
just going to explain. I'm getting there, please.
Okay.
So the reason it can, the overlap here is some of the existentialists, like Nietzsche, John Paul Sartre, we're talking about, okay, existence precedes essence. We are not born with a priority values, and we have to make meaning in our life. And we should also distinguish between Nietzsche and Sartre. I don't think they were the same, but essentially it's rejection of eternal values. The reason this is fundamentally wrong is
that's
we live in society.
All right, go on. I have a critique of your interpretation of Nietzsche and Sartre, but yeah, go ahead. Keep going.
Mm-hmm. And we are born with a priority values in our consciousness and how we perceive the world, right? And I would say, so Carl Jung analyzed religion in his Red Book. When people construct meta-narratives, it's not to oppress people, sort of like a Deleuze or Foucault talked about postmodernism, right? Power structures oppress. No, the meta-narrative there is not one of exploitation. You need a meta-narrative in order to live and have motivation, but that meta-narrative is not internal, it's relational. And the relational is between your cognition and how you experience the world around you in a social context.
Okay. So I'm going to pause you there because
essentialism.
Yeah, I think we've reached back to the idea of phenomenology, which I think, okay, we've made this circle. I think, actually, you want to start, Dan? I'm going to clarify my thoughts real quick.
Okay, sure. Deleuze and Foucault talk about their postmodern understanding of power dynamics can involve a different understanding of meta narratives. Actually, they're the ones that are interested in meta narratives. I don't think Sartre or Nietzsche talk about meta narratives. So I don't, you're throwing a lot of stuff around here. Well, let me.
I'm saying.
Yeah, I don't think that they're super related, and I'm kind of losing track of what point we're trying to get at here. I can engage in all of these ideas. I don't know what is the point. What am I missing here? What am I as an atheist sort of not getting at? Because I don't recognize that there's a contextual relationship with the transcendental with religious people that I somehow don't have. Okay,
so I'm gonna jump in right there real quick because to address meta-narratives, I think we've started with a fundamental, what I would say is a misunderstanding of the idea of a meta-narrative. It is not my belief in this and how we discuss this, that they start as a top-down thing, like we're given a meta-narrative from an authority and then we just go forward. I believe, and I think that this is fairly well borne out, that meta-narratives are the product of culture. And so even the phrase that they're not constructed to oppress, well, they're not really constructed consciously. There's something that arise organically out of cultures around them. When you're talking about phenomenology, and I've been looking it up kind of as we're talking, that's referring, I'm going to finish what I'm saying, that's referring to how we interpret the experience that we're having, right? Like our understanding of the phenomena that we're experiencing. And so meta-narratives would impact our understanding of the phenomena that we're experiencing. I can see that connection that I feel like you're trying to make. In an odd way, though, I would argue that this is almost making an argument for atheism or for lack of need for a God to interpret these things for us. If we're thinking about how we experience the world, and that comes from a meta-narrative that really is more culturally dependent, then why would we need something to tell us what our value? Why would we need a prescribed meta-narrative? I think it makes a lot more sense to think that, yes, our culture and our context determines what we see. Going back to the Jordan Peterson example about the cup, that's sort of a bizarre one to start with as an example of phenomenology. He says we see the cup because we drink out of it. I would say we see the cup because it's advantageous for us to be able to see the cup, that our eyes, which developed over millions and millions of years, are able to perceive food sources because that was advantageous for us over time, and water sources and all of that. It's not to interpret that as divorce from, I would say here, evolution and the evolution of our species would be to misinterpret it. We don't see the cup because we feel like a cup should be there because we want water. We see the cup because it's advantageous for us to be able to see that cup. So applying that to religion, if we're thinking about a meta-narrative, if we're thinking about these stories that we live by that come from our culture, we see a God maybe because we need to see a God, because we want to see a God, because it makes us feel better. Nothing in anything I've heard makes an argument for anything eternal other than the assertion that something eternal is there. Does any of that make sense?
Yeah, I think maybe you misunderstood my point about postmodernism. My point was that sort of atheistic postmodern view is that power meta-narratives are constructed in power relations to oppress. Or that
I said I don't think that's true at all. So at least it's not this atheist view.
That's what Deleuze and Foucault talk about that. Yes. Okay. I don't know if that's
about me as a modern atheist.
Yeah, the regular average Joe atheist. I think that's for postmodern schools of thought. But yeah.
So are you wanting me to argue on behalf of Foucault?
Yeah, I'd like to know this too. Like, what do you want from us? Like, what are we lacking here that we need to understand?
Well, the main thing is, so the claim is a meta-narrative constructed or not constructed? Is it developed, you could say? Is it processed culturally? Well, you can say when a meta-narrative is adopted, you can say that you make a choice to adopt it, but there are certainly some meta-narratives which are more true than other meta-narratives. And the reason you know some meta-narratives are true more than other meta-narratives is because the prescription for a modality of being have, in certain circumstances, been more advantageous than others. Like,
oh yeah, I'm always saying this, dude. Absolutely. Yeah, I'm always saying this. Yeah, 100%. Sorry, I'm not meaning to be dismissive, but what the fuck are we talking about here? Like, okay, I'm not arguing that more meta narratives are truer than other narratives. First of all, I don't agree with that, but also like, why does this pertain to us? Like, what do you argue? What is the position that we allegedly hold that you say that we hold? Like, you seem to work under some sort of assumption that we're operating under, and I'd be curious because maybe you read our minds, or maybe you've heard Sofia's thesis on Foucault and power dynamics that I know that she's written about and has talked extensively about on Talk Heathen before. Like, what are we talking about here?
I'm just saying that that the Judeo-Christian meta-narrative that I would say has broadly influenced the collective psyche of the West is more true than other meta-narratives, right? Because
okay, all right, there we go.
Okay.
Awesome. See, well, I disagree with the take that some meta-narratives are truer than other meta-narratives, because that would just kind of derail everything that postmodernism has ever done. Right? Like, one of the broader themes of postmodernism is that there is no one true meta-narrative, right? Like, I don't know if you're ever going to see them ever saying, oh, well, there's some that are more true than others. Like, that's definitely not a take that's ever happened.
Yeah,
but
I agree with postmodernism.
Of course.
Arguing against that view.
Yeah, but like, why the hell would you say that Judeo-Christianity is somehow more true than other Christianities? Like, how does the meta narrative become more true? Please, I would love to hear that part.
Yeah.
Postmodernism is wrong essentially by rejecting meta narratives, and the reason for this is because the essential canon of the Judeo-Christian metaphysical substrate is respect for divinity of the individual, the idea that the individual is created in the image of God. Reproduction,
okay, so,
which is an essential.
Sorry, I'm gonna interrupt you simply because it is important that you actually answer that question. You're saying why postmodernism is wrong. You were asked why your view is correct. Why is it true that the Judeo-Christian? No, you're not. Start with the question you were asked, please.
I am. I'm telling you, the Judeo-Christian meta-narrative says, for example, reproduction is a virtue. Well, clearly that's beneficial to cultural systems.
Okay. Again, it doesn't always say reproduction is a virtue. It's not a thing. I would love for you to find in the Bible where it says that all people on all earth should be able to reproduce. No, it's God's chosen people. First of all, it's a specific race. Let's start with that first off. But again, we're talking about just a lot of things here. Just because one religious idea, one ideology says a thing is good and you agree with that, doesn't mean it makes it more like true than other people's ideologies. That's just not how ideologies work, right? Like, you can't just say, oh, the Western Christianity is actually super dope, you guys, because it has some things that I think are awesome. Like, that's not a good argument.
You're not letting me finish, so please.
Okay. No, we're not going to.
You have to make a good argument.
So here, I think that I might go ahead and moderate here. We have another caller I'd love to get to, and we have some other things. But so I'm gonna drop here because we've descended into bickering, which is not a good use of our time. And so I think that really quick, I'm gonna mention this system that it feels like we're following, which is blank is good. Meta-narrative says blank is good, and so it is correct. That is really tough because you have to actually give an example of what is good or what is, you have to define that somehow. That's a
Yeah.
really tough thing to define globally. It's a really tough thing to define at all. I think in this conversation, we got really lost in jargon at the beginning. I would say this is one of those instances where maybe it would be beneficial for the caller, if you're still listening, I'm sorry if you're frustrated, to restate things in your own argument as succinctly as possible, because I think that would maybe help in making some of these points. We're kind of in a strange place here where it was frustrating, to be honest, to get to the meat of what we were trying to say. And I feel like we were trying. I think that they were trying for the most part. And yet with all of the kind of jargon, like let's say at fifth grade level, guys, you know?
The fact, oh God, there's so much wrong with this. I'm sorry, I'm going to say this and it's going to trigger some people. This is what happens when you let people like Jordan Peterson take over your thought process in your life. You come to really dumb conclusions by really throwing out a lot of words and thinking that you're the smartest kid in the room, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Judeo-Christianity is not a thing. That's a thing that's made up, okay? There's no through line between Judaism and Christianity unless what the Christians say it is, okay? And just because you think that that's really awesome and it's really cool and everybody else should follow the way that I do things doesn't mean that it's more true than other things. This is just a really complicated argument for essentially what asserts to fascism, right? This idea that, look, we have to follow these moral codes and these principles because not only do I think this is true, but this is actually metaphysically true. This is actually what makes up encompasses our reality, what makes up Western civilization. And if we don't follow through with this could collapse our civilization. This could make us lose what we have in our society, right? So like, yeah, you might view that as extreme, but this is essentially what this comes to. This is the reason why folks get interested in this stuff. They think that there is this idea of the West versus the rest of the world, and then we have to protect the West and all of its values, even though they're inconsistent and some of them aren't great, and it changes all the time. And who is a part of the West and not part of the West is going to be a constant and a debate with no end. But this is what happens. Like, this is what this community gets to. And I guarantee you, Sofia, we're gonna get the Jordan Peterson stands in the comments telling us how we're all wrong. We're taking things out of context. But I've read Nietzsche and I've read Sartre and I've read Foucault, and I disagree with a lot of the premises here. I don't think you can get to these kinds of arguments.
I've read them and forgotten a lot about them. Let's be real. I haven't found...
And they're hard to understand, so it doesn't really matter. Also, Nietzsche has like a billion books. So saying like you've read a philosopher is like, and it's the same thing with the others, but
I would say that I find them less useful than attempting to work out logic from my own standpoint in the world. I think that, they're hard to understand and they're easy to get lost in. And so I realize that I oftentimes will start rephrasing something as like, hey, let's try to put this into something that's a little bit easier to digest. It's not because complex ideas aren't important. It's that I don't believe that we need to use words that are kind of alienating to explain them. And if someone doesn't understand an idea well enough to simplify it, then I don't know that they understand that idea well enough. Full stop. So yeah, I think that this was an interesting call in the sense that I think you're right, that folks get lost in finding folks who tell them what they want to believe. And I kind of think that's a bit what's happened. So yeah, I look forward to Jordan Peterson's stands in the comments because I'm not really sure he would like me anyway. So yeah.
No, he wouldn't like us.
Yeah, but
he'd like the fact that you had a kid. Worse. Oh, good. You fulfilled your reproduction virtue, Sofia.
I know,
congratulations.
But I'm not going to teach them God is real.
You're a pillar of Western society. That's awesome. That's really cool.
I am going to destroy Western society through reproduction.
Yeah.
So, like.
Sorry, I get a little heated with this. I just, I really don't like this. I don't like this idea of, first of all, monopolizing a conversation with absolute, just out of the wall stuff, out of pocket stuff, with stuff that neither of us have actually argued for or we're really interested in talking about, to be blunt.
I thought that was pretty funny. Just the well, it's what postmodern atheists think. I'm like, I don't think that. I don't know. Like, cool.
Well, when you straw man with folks online And it's a lot different when you actually have a conversation with somebody and figure out like, oh, what people actually think and how they evaluate ideas. I guess I don't know. Maybe I'm being a little extra, but I can't be more extra than what our caller decided to bring to the table today, right? So
No,
there
I
you go.
like it. And I think that there's something to be said. And I've said this on the show before that like, I know that you want to get your point out, but I'm not going to let you preach. This is not a sermon. This is not just time for you. And so I appreciate the call and the perspective, but maybe it's really important to hit our points really fast. So I actually got a little bit sassier there than I typically do, just because I think I was a little frustrated with that too. So I don't know, fiery makes it interesting. All right. We should talk real quick about these super chats, first of all, that are in the chat, which include actually the end of Jamie's blind limey, sorry, the super chat there. And you want to read those out real quick?
Sure. We got one from Miranda Rensberger, a member of 6 months, gave $5, who said, "Is Jackie familiar with communicating like a normal human?" Yeah, listen.
Sorry, I shouldn't laugh at that.
No, I mean, look, if you're going to come and talk to us about your points, there's definitely a more succinct way you can like absolutely. If you want to talk about, hey, I think the Christian meta-narrative is more true than others. Cool. Let's start with that. Why do we have to have this preamble? I don't understand. If you have a great idea and it involves some philosophy context, there's definitely a way you can talk about it on this show. There's definitely a way where you can make it work. But let's try to think before we call our hosts and do that. For next time. So thanks for that. And then also, we have our top 5 patrons. Do you want me to read those too, Sophia? I got them right here.
Sure, go for it.
All right, we got top 5 patrons this week is Oops, all singularity, Dingleberry Jackson, Kalevi Helveti, Left in the Leaves, Neil the 604 Atheist, and honorable mention goes to Brian Zupke. Thank you so much to our top 5 patrons. And if you want to be a patron on the Patreon, you can do that in the description. Anyway,
you can go
I'm ready to keep going. We can talk to some more folks if you want.
Okay, so give me 1 second because I am going to point out where they can go to give.
You should do
on
that.
Patreon here. If you want to have your name read on the air, then please consider supporting us at our Patreon, which is tiny.cc/PatreonTH. That's tiny.cc/PatreonTH, like Talk Heathen. On that note, we started recording the Talk Heathen Discord after show for all levels of paid patrons. So if you want more content and more sort of an informal look at the hosts, and this isn't just the hosts who've just hosted, sometimes other hosts come on there and just have a much more casual conversation. It won't necessarily be like show themed. It's really fun, actually. So you can access that if you join our Patreon. There's a couple other super chats a little bit further up. First, I want to blind limey the last thing that he said here, aside from asking God to make him a wing commander in the RAF so he can fly the Eurofighter. The last wish, what we're asking for impossible things, was a reasonably priced 1-bedroom in Austin. I would say keep dreaming, bud.
I would say keep dreaming as well. It's not getting any better.
And then we have a super chat from Nash for $5 Canadian. I don't know why that matters. I feel the need to point it out, though. Yay, Canada. But Jack Frost is one of my favorite myths. It seems so interesting to me that people would attribute something so small to a whole supernatural being. I completely agree. I love the Jack Frost myth. And there's a book that I greatly enjoyed reading called The Year 1000. And it looks at a medieval calendar for each month and uses that illustration to talk about what life was like in that month. And that's, they talk about Jack Frost and the end of the harvest and all of these different rituals. And so specifically Britain in the year 1000. So if you're interested in Jack Frost and some of these interesting ideas that folks had back in the day when we understood less science, that would be one you might enjoy. All right. So, sweet. Okay, those are all the super chats. Be sure you can totally send us more super chats in the comments. All right, so we have one more caller that we're going to take, and I am definitely curious about this. We have had a theme today. The theme has been like philosophy, basically, how our brains work, how we respond to things because our brains work that way. So this is Rogue Show, him from South Carolina, and says, is it necessary for atheists to study philosophy? All right, so we're going to bring you in. Hey, Rogue Show. All right. You're asking, tell us about this. Is it necessary for atheists to study philosophy?
Yeah, but there's one thing that's kind of nagging. It's for those who want to know, postmodernism is actually a perspective that takes a lot of perspective. It's pretty much we have to consider a lot of perspectives here. We can't just operate on one, and it focuses on science, and a lot of it focuses on science and critical thinking, which theists don't like. But my question, my question is, like, is it necessary? Is it necessary to study philosophy as an atheist, or is it like just a side gig you can?
Oh, why is it necessary? Live your best life. Who cares? Do what you want. I don't think being an atheist. Oh wait, you have to get your credits in. Sorry, you can't have your bachelor's in atheism without getting your philosophy credit. Rogue show, actually. So we gotta revoke your atheist degree, right? I don't think it's like that. I think it's more just like, yeah, you can look at it if you want to. Now, granted, there is a benefit to studying philosophy in a formal context versus watching a 15-minute YouTube video that summarizes some guy's books, right? So you're going to get a deeper understanding if you read the works. Obviously, I can't speak any of the original language that folks like Nietzsche, right, writing in German, and then most postmodern philosophers are French, so a lot of them are going to be writing in French, right? So like, I don't have that benefit, and I've heard that that's like the best way to read a lot of works, but I think it's great if you want to speak confidently about a particular subject, sure. But the thing is, philosophy kind of by design is always going to be endless. I mean, I guess that's true with any kind of science, but like if you're going to speak on any sort of like real knowledge or authority, it helps to actually look at the original source material, especially if you're going to be engaging with folks online, which is like what a lot of us tend to do, right? Like you're going to be on the back foot if people are going to be talking about religious phenomenology and you're not familiar with some of the basic like texts that like go into that, right? Because philosophy, unlike a lot of other fields of study, are really context dependent on the sources that come before it. You have to really know philosophy in the order in which things were kind of written in order for things to make sense. Like if you just start with postmodernism, you're going to be really confused if you haven't read modernist texts, and then you're going to be really confused if you haven't read the Greeks, right? And then there's like a lot of stuff that gets referenced each time. So in short, yeah, if you want to, go for it, but like I'm not going to be the atheist police and say, oh, you haven't read your philosophy. No, that's bad news. Yeah, just do what you want. I don't care. Live your best life, Rogue Show.
Yeah, I think that my take is that no matter what it is you're looking at, there's always going to be somebody who disagrees with you and knows more about it than you do. So there's never going to be like this perfect amount you can know about any subject that will mean that you're the most like bulletproof or certified atheist or whatever it would be. Clearly, I am less well-versed in philosophy than Dan is. Like that's just evidently true. And that's fine. I think that there can also be a lot of space in a discussion to ask what someone means by what they're saying. If they're using a term I don't know, then I'm happy to say like, hey, I'm not familiar with that term, because then I get to know how they're understanding it and what standpoint they're actually arguing from, and I can maybe have that conversation a little bit more successfully. So I feel like there's value in focusing on critical reasoning, like regardless of what topic you're looking at. And for me, philosophy it's cool to get into different philosophers, and critical reasoning is a fundamental part of it. But being able to be critical on the fly and just to think through like, what are the questions I have about this? Like, what can we explore further? I found a lot of help with a lot of help from that, I guess. I found that extremely useful, I guess. I'm not always the best with words, but I feel like being curious and asking questions as you're having conversations is totally okay. I do think that there will be experiences you have with atheists and theists where they're going to have read a philosopher and they're going to do a lot of dick swinging with it. Like, sorry, that's rather a crass term, and people without dicks also do this.
It's an appropriate term.
Yeah,
it's
like
an appropriate term.
There isn't quite another term that I'm really sure gives this ideal, but I think there are folks who will feel like they're smarter than you because of that, and who will walk away and feel like, well, they didn't even know blank, but okay,
Yeah.
I'm not really trying to impress those folks anyway, you know?
Yeah, it's also appropriate, actually, Sophia, just to add on to that, because philosophy folks tend to be chauvinistic. There is a tendency towards this idea of this sort of rational objectivity that some people speak to. Look at any philosopher ever, and you'll see that they're some of the most problematic people that have ever lived. Like Heidegger is like kind of a Nazi. Like that's like kind of been spoken about. Like there's all kinds of people who have absolutely written amazing stuff that have contributed to the literature, and they themselves are not the most rational people when it comes to other issues. So the point is, if you're doing it to better yourself, that's great. Will it make you think more critically? Sometimes, sure. It's not the be all end all. Please do not treat one specific discipline as, oh, this is going to solve everything for me and make me super smart and be able to debate people and take them down and be the winner. Because that's what a lot of people take when it comes to philosophy. That's kind of the approach. And it's pretty bad.
I think that can happen too I feel like that's happened with psychology. Let's think about Jordan Peterson. Like that definitely comes up. I think that can happen with economics. Like I've seen a lot of folks who are even hobbyist economics act like this is the field that really explains humans. This is really what gets us, all of the answers, and anything that you come to me with, if you don't understand my jargon, is wrong. So people can be kind of crappy regardless. Yeah, I would also just throw out that there are different ways to engage with philosophy in the sense of like how people actually live and how we apply ideas to how we live. I'm a big advocate for reading fiction, particularly from different time periods and different cultures. I think that being able to see beliefs applied in fiction is incredibly valuable. I think that that's a great way to understand other people, even if it doesn't necessarily help you like win a debate. It helps you understand how other people live and why they live that way. So I would throw out there that like literature, fiction also has a place in just human understanding, even though it does not aim toward being objective. Does all that make sense? We just threw a ton of words at you. We both had some feelings on that one.
Yeah, it makes sense. I guess is it okay if I leave you with two things?
Sure.
You can leave us with 1.5 things. Just kidding. You can do 2.
Okay. I'll rearrange the numbers. So the first thing is that the reason why I sort of ask this question is because I personally find philosophical conversations annoying. And it's like, do you really need to study this? Like, because it just feels like the art of talking past each other a lot.
Sometimes.
And secondly, well, 1.5ly, what woke moralists don't understand about postmodernism is that it's flawed due to the metaphorical substrates.
That's pretty good. That's a pretty good Jordan Peterson right there, Rogue Show.
I was like Jordan Peterson or Kermit the Frog. Those were the two. But I love the idea of Kermit the Frog lecturing about woke moralists. Gotta say that I went there.
No,
thank you. I'm going to go ahead and end the call. Thank you for leaving us with those two things. And awesome. Thank you for calling. Definitely call back. We really liked that question. 1.5. Yes. Sorry. 1.5 things.
Yeah. Well, to answer that question, I think a lot of philosophy is useless to most people. I'm not afraid of saying that. I think there's, it's immensely interesting for some people, and for some people, it's just whatever. Doesn't matter. What does religious phenomenology mean to a fisherman in Taiwan? I don't know. It could mean some things. It could be some very useful stuff. It's not going to help him fish any better, right? Like for a lot of people, granted, maybe I'm speaking to the mode of capitalism there, right? And saying, oh, it's not useful for you making money. And that's not what I'm trying to say. What I'm trying to say is that, like, you know, when we're talking about metaphorical or metaphysical substrates, it just doesn't hit with a lot of people because it's not, unless you're in the academy and you're producing works, it's not going to do much for you. So yeah, I don't think you have to have a understanding of philosophy to be a smart person or a competent person or to think correctly. I only think it's useful for talking about the subjects that philosophy tends to talk about, which could be a lot of things.
It's like when you play a really complex board game, which I myself have learned to appreciate because many people I love really like complex tabletop board games. Being good at that game just means you're good at that game. Being good at chess doesn't mean you're actually going to be good at war. Like sometimes we like to make these things seem like a bigger deal than they are. For me, it took me a long time to actually feel confident in saying I am smart and I don't understand that. And that's acceptable and okay. I do think I'm a little self-conscious of that as a woman, to be honest, because I feel the need to almost be like, well, I have to be the smartest, but no, whatever, fuck them. So yeah, I agree. And I just feel like trust yourself and trust your logic and your arguments and things that you can logically defend are true.
Yeah.
Do you
and don't be
that?
afraid to say you don't know.
Yes, 100%. That's my mission. Make everyone say they don't. Make everyone okay with saying they don't know. Do you want to read that last super chat there?
Oh yeah, sure. I'll do that. And we have the super chat from Constellation Pegasus, who gave $20, $19.99. Thanks for that. It said,
"Thank you.
What's the most infuriating subject you have to deal with?"
That's a good question.
Yeah, I don't know. What's the most for you, Sophia?
Well, it's interesting because I was thinking about like what actually makes me the angriest, and it was more from when I was in the church actually than something that I engage with as much now. If another Christian ever looks at me and smiles and says, well, no one is righteous, no, not one, I'm going to fucking drown them. Like I have heard people say that about child molesters, about like folks who are just obnoxious, about like, it's just a deflection. I've never heard it used in a way that isn't just to say, well, you're bad too, essentially. And I'm like, if that's where your faith gets you, then I have no interest in your faith or your interpretation of it. So I think obviously that gets me kind of riled up, and that's I feel like I deal with that attitude more now than the actual phrasing because now I'm out of the church. But it was smirkingly used, or I don't know if that's a word, smugly maybe used so often in the church, and it's disgusting. It's a coverall for being disgusting. So anyway, that at least makes me the maddest.
Snap to that. That's good. That's good stuff, Sophia. I don't know. I do like I dislike intellectual posturing, in case that wasn't clear already. I think that's a pet peeve of mine. I don't care whether you're you think you're the smartest guy in the room. It doesn't matter. All it matters is what we're talking about in that context. I've met so many people in my life who are exactly as you described, Sophia. They're good at the one thing, or they think they're real good, and they think that they're just the bee's knees for everything in life. And there's always so much more you can learn from other people if you take the time to really set your ego aside and look at the world and spend time with people. Because it turns out not everything. Wisdom doesn't always come from Discord conversations and YouTube videos. There's more to life, right, than just engaging with other people online, arguing the same things every day, which I do see from some people sometimes, right? Like there's a big world out there. So that's the stuff that probably annoys me to no end. It's the folks who do call in and who consider themselves experts on particular subjects, and until they've actually talked to somebody about that subject, I guess, I'm not saying any cult in reference today in particular, but even just like, general Christianity kind of stuff too, people saying, oh, well, you haven't actually read the Bible. Oh, well, I've read it actually from beginning to end. And I can tell you a summation of probably every book. If you ask me one, what am I missing here? Right. That kind of stuff. So I don't know.
I think in our family, so we're big Lord of the Rings people. in my family. And we thought about naming our son Theoden. We did not, but, you know, we thought about it. And we refer to that as Saruman syndrome, because if you read Lord of the Rings, this my nerdy self is like, Saruman didn't take the time to really understand how armies are composed and effective to the degree that a professional, essentially not standing army, but a more professional, cohesive army like Rohan, which has been operating as an army for years, understood. And so when in the movies, it looks like Saruman is a genius with an overwhelming force, realistically, Saruman thought because he's a very smart person, he would be able to, of course, take over, you know, the lands of the Rohirrim. Of course, he could, you know, be on par with Sauron and be a power to match his, when in actuality, he just assumed that because he was smart in these things, he knows he's smart in, that he's good at everything. There are some powerful tech folks that I feel like fit this description. It's essentially the idea that I understand this so I can run everyone else's lives, right? Or I can tell everyone else how to live because I have this thing. I know this thing. So yeah, I feel like Saruman syndrome is what I think of for that.
Strong great man of history vibes there, right? Like great man theory of history there vibes. Right? Yeah, the tech bros thing. Yeah, very, very on point with that.
Yes.
Yeah, I like that. But hey, we're getting close to the
we need to wrap up. You are right.
Yep.
To remind everyone, the prompt for this week is, what's the reason God created hell? Wrong answers only. Reply in the comments and tune in at the beginning of next week's episode to hear the top 3 answers. And we also want to thank Richard for helping out today. Richard, do you want to pop on and tell us what was your favorite part of the show? Here's Richard.
Oh,
Yay!
Jackie.
Talking shit, by the way, were you talking shit before the show? I'm just curious because you could have.
I'm going to keep that a secret. You'll have to. Well, Jackie, I usually come in and I give a general appraisal about all of the calls, but the last 2 weeks I feel I've ranted. Jackie, if you are an honest person, which I believe you may be, you will know that phenomenology of religion is a wide field with many, many disagreements within it.
That's true. That's the other thing too. We barely talked about religious phenomenology. I'm sorry, I'm interrupting you, but that also is kind of weird. Anyway.
One of the things that really pisses me off with people like that is they come on and they make statements as though there is only one opinion in a field. And it is not true. It is not the case. And something cannot be, I could go on about this for hours, so I'm going to keep this as short as possible. Something cannot be more true than something else. You might be more persuaded that that thing is true, but something is either true or false. It cannot be more true than something else. This could have been an amazing call. Had Jackie been, someone who wanted to come in and have a genuine conversation about this subject, it could have been an amazing call. We could have got to the point, to that thing where we could have investigated what makes something, a legitimate belief. Where the phenomenology of religion really comes into its own is, where is something a legitimate belief where we cannot criticize someone for having a belief in that thing, and does that make it true? That would have been an amazing call. But instead we had to go down this thing. And here's what Jackie did. And here's what Jordan Peterson does. What they do is this stuff, 15, 20, maybe 25, pretty decent-sized testicles in the mouth. And then they open their mouth and then they all come cascading out like a fucking waterfall. It's bullshit. You can speak in plain language. If you understand the subject and you want to be honest when you're discussing the subject, you can speak in plain language. The reason you don't do that is because you know full well if you do that, there is a conversation to be had, and that the conversation takes all the power away from you, because what you want to do is intersperse your superiority. And finally, before I drop out, you don't talk to my fucking hosts like you talk to them. I was the one who muted you at the end of that call. I will do it again. You do not talk to my hosts like that. Thank you, guys. That was a fantastic show. I really appreciate you.
Thank you. I feel so supported.
I know. It's like our dad just came in and talked to the teacher or something. That was the feeling I got there.
It's nice. Yeah, and I went to like drop the call and I was like, oh, it's already muted. I wonder how that happened. Yeah, it was amazing. Well, amazing. Thank everyone for watching, for being here. We are going to have a bit of an after show with at least a couple of us at the tiny.cc/ACD Discord. I got all those words out. That's where you can catch us. And if you don't believe, this is your community and we appreciate you being here. If you do believe, we don't hate you.
We're just not convinced. Thanks again, everybody. We'll see you later.
We want the truth, so watch Truth Wanted live Friday at 7 p.m. Central. Visit tiny.cc/YTTW and call into the show at 512-991-9242 or connect to the show online at tiny.cc/calltw.